Much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. You're looking sharp.
Thank you.
Well, I'll actually toss this over to O. I know Omari has some questions that he wanted to make sure he asked. We can bring O in to make sure he's getting some of these questions answered.
Oh yeah, well, I was just going to start with the introduction first. First, congratulations on your appointment, new sheriff here in Martin Luther King County. Maybe you could start and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and why you wanted to pursue this position.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your listeners, your viewers. So my name is Patti Cole-Tindall, and I am a 30-year public servant. I've actually worked with for King County for over 24 years. Started my career in law enforcement 30 years ago as a special agent with the Washington State Gambling Commission. And I moved from there to the State Employment Security Department doing investigations of unemployment insurance fraud. And then that brought me here to King County in 1998. And I served in a number of roles here. I started out in what was juvenile detention. I was an internal affairs investigator, moved to the jail, served as HR, employee relations. And in 2010, the executive appointed me to be the director of labor relations. And in that role, my job was to oversee all collective bargaining. Most county employees are in a union. And so we were bargaining with those unions. There were 33 unions, 81 bargaining agreements. And I did that until I came to the sheriff's office. But right before I left that role, I also served 11 months as the director of the Office of Law Enforcement Oversight. And that's what got me in front of then Sheriff John Urquhart. And he said, I don't know how, I don't know when, but I want you to come work for the sheriff's office. I was brought in from the outside because, as I said, I had started my career in law enforcement, left it, and so I was not a career law enforcement person, and brought into the agency. There were 35 other people that felt they should have been given the division chief promotion that I was brought in to take. So it wasn't necessarily welcomed with open arms, but in being an African-American female, I think that was also, I'm not going to say that was the main issue. The main issue was that I didn't grow up in that agency and I came in from the outside. So I was there, I did that for a while. And in 2020, Sheriff Joe Hanknick asked me to be her undersheriff, which is the number 2 role in the agency. And then the executive asked me to be the interim sheriff effective the first of the year. And here I am as the selection for the permanent sheriff. So let me explain a little bit about why I decided to apply for the permanent job, because when the executive appointed me, I said, I'm not interested. I will not pursue the permanent position. And at the time I said that, I meant it. And because I felt like my job needed to be to heal what had happened. We had low morale in the agency. We weren't necessarily revered in the community. So I really saw my focus to rebuild and repair relationships and focus on that work and not applying. So it was through that work, along with my leadership team, that a number of people, both inside and outside the agency, were like, won't you reconsider? This is exactly what we need. And, I pushed it away. And then I really gave it some serious thought. And I thought, you know what? Why not me? I am a non-traditional police executive. Why not me? And so I let the executive know of my intent to apply. I applied right before the closing date and was named a finalist. And then, as you said, yesterday, it was announced that I'm the appointment for the next sheriff.
Wow. Well, I just want to say, I think that, I really appreciate you giving us that background and the history because, from my perspective, one of the things that I was even talking about yesterday as the announcement was made was how necessary it is to be thinking about the relationships with community and the idea that can be something that is you as now King County Sheriff can carry forward. And it's not just an initiative from, HR or the administrative side or whatever, but really from the sheriff's perspective, I think is so key and crucial to that work. When you talk about what you were able to do during this kind of interim phase and why people were resonating with the need for you to really take on this position, what are some of the things that really stand out to you in that time frame that had people saying, will you reconsider? What are some of the things you were able to do in that time frame?
So there's a few that I can speak to. So one is just creating a relationship that should have been already created. That was with the NAACP. When we reached out to them and said, we want to partner and have a relationship, they were like, well, who? The King County what? Because they're used to dealing with Seattle Police, Bellevue Police, but had not had a relationship with the King County Sheriff's Office when we are, in the same community. Mm-hmm. And so we started that work and started that relationship. And, I will say that initially they were a little hesitant. They were like, is this just like a one and done? Or are you going to be in this for the long haul? Because they wanted to, if we're going to partner, it's going to have to be an ongoing relationship. And I was like, absolutely. We want to be transparent. We want to open up and show you what are doing. We want you to help us figure out maybe what we can do better, how we can be responsive to the community in a better way. So that's one example. Another example of dealing with or engaging with community that I'm really proud of is the work with WELD. WELD is an organization that deals with people who have been previously incarcerated, and it's helping them to be successful once they reintegrate back into society. And most, I think, would say, well, why are you spending your time there? Well, I think it's key, and they really are not that different than you and I, right? And so isn't that the perfect place to engage? And they invited me to a session that they were having for their folks just to, help them with skills and, just okay, now that they're left incarceration, now what? And I was just going to stop by to say hi, but I stayed the entire time because I really enjoyed it. And they didn't until the end of the session say I was the sheriff, the interim sheriff. So they might have thought I was one of them, right? And I sat with these two young women. One, a gal she was 30 and she'd been incarcerated since she was 14.
Wow.
The other one was 31, had spent 8 years. And they could have been my daughters. And we were having these conversations and they were like, we would have never, if you would have told us last week we'd be sitting with the popo, with the sheriff, we would have said, no way. And they said, you're normal. Exactly. And there are many, many more like me. I have a deputy that helped me get hooked up with the WELD program. He's one of our laterals from Detroit. Love him. I'll just say his name's James Taylor. He has a goal of saying hello to 100 people a shift. Now think about that. Think about that difference. He doesn't sit in his car. He gets out and he walks around and he's going to say hello to 100 people. And he is all about engagement. And we have many deputies like that want to help with the community. So I really see us just at the beginning of being able to do this work. I want to create action councils, getting a faith-based leader group together. I want to work with the community so they can advise me and my folks on what can we do better? How can we together figure out some solutions?
Great points. Oh,
I had a few questions from my side over here. The first one, quick one. You've been in the county ecosystem over there where the sheriff was elected and you're the first one appointed. Do you still feel that like you have a mandate? And with the sheriff being elected, through the ballot box, the sheriff always carries a bit of swag because it's like, hey, I was elected directly by the people. You're our first appointed sheriff in a while. The sheriff has been appointed before in King County. Do you feel that your position is going to be recognized as such, not only in your organization, but throughout King County?
Well, how to answer that is this. It's akin to a city chief who reports to a mayor. So I report to the county executive. And so he is the boss. I mean, I see my role is to explain and bring, what are the pros and cons to an issue. But if I've done that and he does not agree, there is, now we have a decision point, right? But different from the elected sheriff who could really say and do what they wanted. The appointed sheriff, I don't have that latitude, but I also see the benefit of being able to partner with the executive and his team on issues such as budget. I mean, I feel there's a number of things that we need to right size in our agency, and I need money to do that. We can talk about body cams. I need money to do that. And being that we are part of the bigger county, there's going to be that support to help us be successful. Because if we're not successful, it reflects on the entire county, where I think previously having an elected sheriff, there could be this distance. So I actually see it to be a benefit. And I have worked directly for the executive for previously. So he knows what he's getting with me. I am a collaborator. I'm a problem solver. And I don't see it as a detriment. I see it as an opportunity to partner and to help us as law enforcement with the exec be responsive to the community, but also to our BIPOC communities, because I know that one thing the executive has asked not only of me, but other department directors is to lead through racial justice. So we will be working on that in the sheriff's office. And I think when you have an elected sheriff, they don't have to share the value of the greater county.
Right. And speaking of that, what are some of the challenges then in the sheriff's office? I live in the city of Seattle. And so, interaction with the sheriff is very minimal there, unless like special events or transit or something like that. Maybe you could explain to our viewers the job of the sheriff and the size of the county, and also where you have areas like Skyway, which has per capita the biggest Black population in the state of Washington, but then also you have areas of like, say, North Bend, which is also within King County.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. So we cover 2,300 square miles. We have 12 contract cities. These are cities that contract for police service with the sheriff's office. Cities such as Covington, Shoreline, Burien, Newcastle, Maple Valley. We also have the Muckleshoot tribe that we police for. We have 2 transit agencies, Metro and Sound Transit, and we also have the King County Airport. So we cover a lot of territory. So in Seattle proper, our folks basically cover transit, which is the Metro police. We have bees, they're on bicycles, but also other Metro officers, and then the Sound Transit. But so the unincorporated areas that you talk about, we have a number of those, Skyway being one, White Center, where we were yesterday when the executive made his announcement. So these are unincorporated areas that are very different, as you said, from North Bend. So our role is going to be to work with all the different communities to learn what they need specifically, how we can best partner, how we can learn together. What are some of the problems? What are some of the solutions? And then also I see us working more closely with social service agencies, such as community passageways, and partnering with them the way that Seattle Police partners with them. So I'm just really intrigued by that. So we have so much opportunity in the sheriff's office, and we do cover a large area. We cover Vashon Island. That's also. So does that explain a little bit about,
Well, it does, in the sense that, so people should realize, there you go. People should realize, the city of Seattle is 88 square miles, and you just said the county, 2,300 square miles. So, it's a very big area. But my next question is, and I also wanted to get on this issue of gun violence that's occurring. But one thing here is, what are you doing, or what's your plan in going into the King County Sheriff's Office and being the sheriff now, and in ensuring that internally your ecosystem isn't working against you? I mean, we've kind of seen this play out before. Chief Best came in with a lot of support from community. Black people rallied around Chief Best. But, our reporting here over the last few years, we found incident after incident where Chief Best command staff worked against her best interest and the people of the city of Seattle. You know, I mean, and I'm not giving her an exemption. I say yesterday, it's the same chief that deployed tear gas and everything else, and this massive police violence that occurred here in the city of Seattle. But internally as well, Chief Best was fighting a battle inside the Seattle Police Department because people in the Seattle Police Department did not want to see this Black woman there be the chief or be successful. They actively worked against her, and we've reported on it time and time again. You now, Black woman, going to be the sheriff now of King County. What are you doing to make sure that you're not getting sabotaged from the inside of your own organization?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you know, what happened to Carmen was very, very unfortunate. I would say this, that I have worked ever since I came to the sheriff's office, which was October 2015, to prove myself, to prove my worth, to prove that I deserved to be there, right? That I wasn't just an accident that showed up. It was intentional, and that I was bringing something that was different and nuanced to the King County Sheriff's Office. And through the years, I have been able to gain the respect of the folks inside the agency. And I firmly believe that employees who feel respected by their leaders will then go and show that respect in their interactions. So to the community, to each other, to colleagues. But I really feel, for me, what's been important is to establish the relationship with my staff. And I'm not saying Chief Best did not do that, but I believe that my leadership team is solid, and they are with me 100%. I mean, they understand I am different. I didn't grow up in a police agency, which that would be what the same is. So I am different. But it's this respect. It's the way I have come into this agency, been there 6.5 years, and slowly gained the respect of even what I would say were critics, people who are like, why is she here? She's not a cop. I'm not going to say that it was ever overt about the race, that I was Black. It was more that I was an outsider. And so one by one, you know, I have gained the respect of folks. And I'm not saying I'm everybody's cup of tea or everybody's fan, but what they're going to get with me is consistency, which I think is important in leadership. And I do believe the command staff, and when I say command staff, that's not just my immediate team, that's the precinct majors, the city, contract city chiefs, and our sergeants that are running the day-to-day of the operation. When they believe that the leader is in their court, they are going to stand up and do the right thing. And I believe that's what's happening. So I will continue to do that in this agency. And if I find that somebody is, as you say, sabotage or doing something that is inconsistent, we will deal with that and address it. And I have the full support of the executive in dealing with those things.
Well, I really appreciate this question that Omari brings up, because I think it's so important for us to understand how these nuances in terms of relationship, how they play out, because we still are dealing with, a society, especially after what we witnessed in 2020 here in Seattle. It's unfortunate that those characteristics of what we saw through the Seattle Police Department kind of spread to many people to not even have a distinguishing factor of, oh, well, that's King County, they're different, or that's a different city, police force, they're different. We just see police, right? We just see, officers, and we see that there's this divide between, officers and the people. And this idea of protecting that kind of boys in blue and gals in blue, like this kind of idea of protecting each other before really being transparent about what it is so that there's justice can be served. We've just experienced that a lot. So I really appreciate you talking about the nuances, but I think that that's something that people need to understand even more. And when you think about your approach, because you are saying, look, I'm an outsider, I wasn't, coming through the cop ranks, I didn't do that pathway. You have a different understanding of how you're doing it. You talked about the relationships in community and the relationships you're building with your team. How does the community get to connect to that and resonate with that if they're not a part of NAACP? I'm talking about the regular, family member, community member out there who's like, man, I don't have no connection to what they're doing over there at the King County Sheriff's Office. How do you connect with those individuals?
Well, I'd like to invite people to reach out to me directly, because I'm interested in developing developing, I have a number of groups. I mean, and maybe we do something where I'm just, as you're talking, I was thinking we could have sessions where we just invite the public to come and interact with us. So they can learn about the King County Sheriff's Office. Because you're right, people in this area, when they think about the police, they think about SPD, Seattle Police. They don't necessarily think about, or I've had somebody ask me this question: what does a deputy do? Well, they do the same thing as a police officer. They just happen to work for the sheriff's office and are called a deputy. The work is the same, just where they patrol is different. So being able to talk about that. The other thing is, maybe there's videos we can push out, and like you're doing podcasts here, ways that we can connect with the community so that, and post them to our website. We do have information that's on the website. We have use of force dashboards, as well as our internal affairs dashboards. That shows, it's kind of I'll say, a peek under the curtain about what is happening in the agency, and folks can go and review the data there and do their own little slice and dice the data and see, just, okay, in my area of the county, how many contacts does the sheriff's office have? What does that look like? And then with the internal affairs data, what complaints are coming in about our deputies? And then what are the investigations and the dispositions of those? So I think any way we can engage with the community, but I am very open to ideas. So I'm excited because we have a blank slate. We can really together figure out what is it that this community wants and expects from the King County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you.
I got there you go. I got a question here. Is it one thing that I do want to bring up is like, man, we can't push it all off on SPD. King County Sheriff's Office does have some issues with community, and we're gonna bring up Tommy Lay and the case that was settled last year with where there was a settlement between the King County Sheriff's Office and the Lay family, where initially they said Tommy Lay had a knife, and then they said he had a pen, and then he might not have had a pen. And I mean, the arduous process that the Lay family had to go through to be able to find some justice. And so, in Seattle, we might sometimes be insulated in thinking about SPD, but, the King County Sheriff's Office does have issues, not only in Black community, you know what I'm saying? Tommy Lay is a whole different ethnic community. So in different communities across our county, there are outstanding issues that people have with the King County Sheriff. What are you going to do in addressing that and trying to actually build some kind of relationship with community, and also, understanding what community safety means to different communities?
So, as you said, I mean, we do sometimes, unfortunately, have an incident where somebody loses their life at the hands of a deputy. That is always unfortunate. That is not anything I want or anybody in my agency wants. I really want everybody to go home at the end of the day, both people in the community and also my officers. I can't guarantee we will never have an unfortunate incident, because when I have people with guns and badges and the authority to use force, sometimes something may happen. But what I can do is ensure that our deputies have the proper training. Perishable skills training is what I call it, where I've told the executive I need money for that, and not just drawing their firearm or their taser, but de-escalation, how to talk to people, time, distance, and shielding, that we need to do more with that. Defensive tactics, using their hands instead of their weapon, that almost always has tragic results. So most officers are going to resort to what their training is when they get into a critical incident. That's just the way it works. I mean, we're humans, and that's the way we operate. So we have a responsibility, myself as the sheriff, the executive, and county council, to approve the budget, that we have enough money to properly train our people, because we got to take them off a shift. That means we got to pay somebody else to work their shift while we're training them. And my goal is that we would have at least one day a quarter of what I call perishable skills training, so that we can properly train our folks and not just hope they do the right thing.
Right.
That
that's your existing deputies and staff there. And I think the training is important. And one thing that we see that's going on here in the city of Seattle is when they're talking about they need more officers on, they want to hire more officers, and they're talking about bonuses and everything else. But I don't hear anybody talking about what's the type of officer. Is it an officer that is used to dealing with diverse communities, or is it, you know what I'm saying? What type of officer? And that's something that's never seems to be addressed, is that, you know, but before we have to reach people who are in the system, they have to have training. But what's the plan for the type of deputies that you want to be recruiting into the sheriff's office?
That's a great question, because that is key, right? We need to recruit folks that look like those of us in the community. And women, we don't have, and we are very, very low on women. And there's a national initiative called 30 by 30, 30% female by 2030. We have signed on to that, and we hope to achieve that. We're 11% female. In terms of African-American males, we're actually at, you know, what the percentage of African Americans are in the community, but like other areas like Native American, Hispanic, we are low. And so we've got to reach out to those communities and the type of person. We're not looking for what I think people would think is the, you know, officer that wants to run and gun. No, we want somebody who is more nuanced. Yes, they want to help the community, but also in a different way. When I talked about that deputy who wants to say hello, his goal of saying hi to 100 people a shift, it's that engagement, having people engage with police in a positive way, not as a negative. So police who want to come in to truly help people. And it's kind of a hybrid of, yes, there are times we need to enforce the law, but there's other times we just need to engage with people, find out, meet them where they are, what do they need. And we also need to, as a community, make sure that we have proper resources for people who are in crisis, people who are homeless, because, you know, what's the why? Why did somebody commit a crime? Is it because they're hungry and they don't have a place to live? I mean, so what do we do as a community collectively to help those people? And so the type of officer that is really wanting to dig down and do that type of work, not just, you know, I'm going to drive fast and make arrests, because that's not where we're at.
Well, this really leads me to my next question around quotas. You know, we know the statistics, we know the data. You know, the United States has, you know, one of the most extraneous, you know, prison systems in the world. When we think about the way that we deal with crime and punishment, we talk about, you know, institutions, you know, a prison system not really being rehabilitative in nature, right? We talk so much about this, and the data is out there. The people are coming forward with their stories. We're understanding even some of the minute details that have changed people's life based on, you know, them experiencing incarceration, or, you know, hey, that one person that, you know, gave me a different pathway. When you talk about community passageways, and I think about programs like Choose 180, that we see that we need to be treating the whole person. But I wanted to ask you, in terms of, you know, as King County Sheriff, how do you deal with all of that? The data about us, you know, having this kind of, you know, hard, stark, you know, response to crime, but also the fact that it's because of these situations and the nuance of people living out here in, you know, unaffordable cities and all of that really drive it. I just wonder how you, as King County Sheriff, can bring this kind of, again, outsider approach to a lot of these things that are like, you know, it's not about the amount of tickets you're giving, and it's not about the amount of people that you're putting in jail, and how you can disrupt this system that seems as though that's what a lot of people in the community aspect and perspective are dealing with.
So we need to have systems in place that allow us to divert people and give the officer, the deputy on the street, the authority to make that decision to divert somebody instead of arresting them for certain crimes. So we do have what's called LEAD, law enforcement assisted diversion, which allows the deputy to not arrest somebody, to get them the service that they need so that they can avoid entering the system in the first place. And I think that's key here, right? How do we stop people from entering the system when they really just have a basic need that's not being met, right? I mean, again, why is somebody committing the crime? And if we can create more programs that are available to help people who are in crisis, then I think we will start to see the effect of fewer people, BIPOC people filling our jails. But that costs money too. And we need, as a community, to invest in that, but also then work with these community organizations, these social service organizations that are already in place doing this good work. So I see it as something that we embrace. We do here in the sheriff's office, but we need more of it and more money so that we can work with the community to do more.
Right. And when Trey brought up something, she said there, data and using data. One thing that we do know is that King County, Public Health, Seattle, King County, Zero Youth Detention, the county has invested a lot in gathering data around gun violence disruption. And in a lot of cases, they're able to use that data to identify a lot of different things. What exactly is your plan in working with your other county partners like Public Health, Seattle, King County, and even Seattle Police Department and other cities, either your contract cities or municipalities within the county, to be able to disrupt this gun violence that's occurring across King County?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is we need to look at the data. Who are the victims? Where are people getting the firearms that are using them? We need to also focus on the retailers, and that they, when they sell these firearms, ensure that they are passing on responsible gun ownership to the people that are buying them. And so I think that is key, looking at the data. And then again, going back to the community, because many in the community know perhaps some of the people who are using the guns, being initiators of this gun violence, but we do have to partner with other agencies, both local law enforcement and federal, because right now, as you said, gun violence is rampant in this area. And, it's not unique to Washington or Seattle. I listened to a podcast the other day that was in New York, and they were talking about actually in New York how it's less than it is here, and why. And it's because they have resources they've decided to invest, and they have people that are out walking the streets that their job is to interact with those that are in need, those who have some crisis. And it's again, like you were saying, dealing with the whole person. But the attacking the gun violence, we really have to figure out, why is this happening? And I think part of the why, this podcast I listened to, and I'm happy to share the link, was about coming out of COVID, that people, part of that too, people have been locked up for a long time. People from the murder of George Floyd, and just people feeling really devalued. And so there isn't the same value on human life that I think, perhaps existed years ago. And so how do we as a community, it's not just on law enforcement. I think a lot of times people look to, well, it's, cops, what are you going to do to fix this? It is a holistic approach. So yes, as law enforcement, we need to be out there, and yes, we need to reduce crime and the fear of crime, right? Where people can feel safe walking their dog or walking their child to the park. So we have to work together, but I think that's also our opportunity to partner with the community on, all right, how can we solve the problems that they identify? And I suspect, and based on some data, that gun violence will go down, but we aren't there yet, right? And so I see the King County Sheriff's Office being at the table for these conversations, being present with, I participated in a task force that was U.S. Attorney Nick Brown, who's also African-American. He called a meeting of the South End agencies. Seattle Police was also invited, and then King County Sheriff, to actually talk about the uptick in violence. And many of those South End agencies, their answer was, well, you need to charge more people. Well, I don't know if that is the answer. I think it is more about us collectively figuring out the why and then finding a solution. So it's a big, multifaceted issue. And I can tell you that as the sheriff, it will be a key issue for me, and I will be engaged.
Well, thank you for that. I know we're coming up against time. Oh, I had only just one last thing, because I'm a Black woman, you're a Black woman. I had to ask, how important it is for you to be, in this position right now and bringing your lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about your professional experience,
Mm-hmm.
but your lived experience as a Black woman in this country, right?
Right.
To this amazing, position of leadership here as King County Sheriff.
Well, it's not lost on me that I'm the first African-American sheriff for King County, but also the state of Washington. And so that to me is a big deal. I'm reminded, I have people that tell me that this is historical. And so it is important, but what I say is this: I feel that, now little Black and brown girls can see, you know what, I can be the #1 person in an agency too. Carmen Best was #1. So they see us. Kenyatta Jackson being the first Supreme Court Justice Black female, they can see themselves that maybe they will be part of that. Maybe they can make history. So I feel that it is important. And so that is part of my lived experience. But I also would say, I think my non-traditional path to get here also makes this unique, because at this space, at this time, King County, again, is doing something different. I will say that I'm not sure there's a lot of support, like around the state. A lot of the other sheriff's offices are concerned about their sheriff's office also going from elected to appointed. And then when you have a non-traditional candidate that's been selected, that also, I think, sheds some, concern for some people. But I'm just, I'm excited about the work ahead.
Right on. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, good stuff. Well, I would say this, ma'am, is that, I hope that through your tenure here as sheriff, that you will continue to check in. I'm glad that you came and you made us one of your first stops after the appointment. And I hope that you remain accessible, not only to us, but to other media, especially Black media, and accessible to community. And we look forward to following up with you throughout your time here as the King County Sheriff.
Thank you. I'd be happy to come back anytime. Thanks.
All right, Trey.